We live in this amazing world of one-click ordering and next day, sometimes same-day delivery. But have you ever really stopped to think about those massive windowless buildings you see on the side of the highway? Well, today we're going inside the box. We're going to uncover the surprisingly complex and really costly world of the modern warehouse. So what really happens in that split second? The moment you confirm your order, you're not just buying a thing, you're kicking off this hidden, high-stakes relay race. And trust me, it is not a simple grab and go. It's this incredibly intricate dance of logistics, and we're about to follow every single step. Okay, here is the most important thing to get your head around right from the start. A warehouse is not just a giant closet for stuff. That's not its main job. Its primary job is something called breaking bulk. It's all about taking in these huge, massive shipments and breaking them all the way down into the tiny little orders that you and I make every day. It's a massive center for reorganization. So picture this. The journey begins right here. A product, let's say it's a new pair of headphones. It doesn't show up at the warehouse one box at a time. No way. It arrives stacked high on a wooden pallet with thousands of others. A massive wholesale-sized delivery. From there, that huge pallet gets broken down. Those headphones are unstacked, and then they're stored in smaller, much more manageable units, like cases. Maybe a case has 24 or 48 boxes inside. This just makes them way easier to find and grab later on. And this is what it's all about. This is the goal. When you place your order, the warehouse has to find and ship out just one single item, one each, as they call it, from those thousands that originally arrived. And that right there is the core challenge. The smaller the unit you have to handle, the more labor-intensive and, frankly, the more expensive it gets. Okay, so to really understand how this whole thing works, we are going to follow one of those headphone boxes on its grand tour through the warehouse, all the way from the loading dock right to the shipping truck. So this is our roadmap. It looks pretty simple, right? Everything that comes into the building goes through receiving and put away. And everything that goes out goes through order picking, checking, packing, and shipping. But, trust me, the devil is absolutely in the details. All right, let's start with that inbound journey. This whole part of the process is about getting our headphones off the truck and onto a very specific shelf somewhere deep inside that massive building. So in receiving, trucks pull up, everything's unloaded, scanned into the computer system, and checked for any damage. Then, during put away, a worker takes that case of headphones, puts it in an assigned storage spot, and scans the location. That way, the warehouse computer knows exactly where it is, down to the inch. Now, these steps are crucial, but really, they're just the setup for the main event. And here we are. This is the heart of the whole operation. Your order comes in. The system knows exactly where those headphones are. Now, all a worker has to do is go and get them. And this single act, finding one specific item for one specific order, is the most critical and, by far, the most expensive part of the entire process. And here's the proof. Just look at this cost breakdown. A staggering 55% of all warehouse operating expenses, just for order picking. That is more than every other activity combined. All the receiving, the storing, the packing, the shipping, it's all dwarfed by the simple act of picking one item off a shelf. So this is the million-dollar question, right? What on earth makes that 55% so outrageously expensive? I mean, it's not the act of grabbing the box itself. It's something else entirely. And here it is, the jaw-dropping answer. Of all the time spent on order picking, a full 55% of it is just traveling. It's workers walking and walking and walking through aisles, sometimes for miles every single day, just to get from one item to the next. The single biggest cost in a warehouse isn't some fancy robot or a high-tech machine. It's just the time people spend walking. So if walking is the enemy, how do you fight it? Well, the entire science of warehouse management is basically built around this one challenge. How do we minimize travel time? Let's take a look at how they do it. The key metric they all obsess over is called pick density. It's actually a pretty simple idea. How many items can a worker pick for every single foot they have to walk? The higher the pick density, the better. The more efficient the warehouse is. Why? Because it means less walking and more picking. So one of the most common strategies to boost that pick density is something called batch picking. Instead of sending a worker all the way down an aisle just to get your one pair of headphones, the system waits until, say, 10 other people have ordered items in that same area. Then one worker makes a single trip to pick all 11 items at once. Now, what's really fascinating here is the trade-off this creates. Single order picking is simple, sure, but it's super inefficient, lots of walking. Batch picking, on the other hand, saves a huge amount of walking, but it creates a new problem. Now you've got a cart full of stuff for 10 different customers that has to be carefully sorted out. So you've essentially traded a walking problem for a sorting problem. So once our headphones have been picked, either by themselves or as part of a big batch, they head to the finish line for the final stages before they leave the building for good. First, the order gets checked for accuracy. Gotta make sure it's right. Then it's packed, and the goal here is to fit everything into the smallest possible box to save on shipping costs. Finally, it's staged and loaded onto the correct truck. And notice, these steps are way less costly. Why? Because there's very little walking involved. It all happens in one consolidated place. But the journey doesn't always end there. This represents the average return rate for e-commerce. That means for every 4 packages that go out that door, 1 is likely coming right back. And handling those returns is an incredibly expensive headache, sometimes costing 10 times as much as it did to send the product out in the first place. And the role of the warehouse itself is changing, it's evolving. They're not just moving boxes anymore. Now they're performing what are called value-added services. These are tasks that used to be done by manufacturers or maybe in the back of a retail store, like putting together gift sets, adding price tags, or even doing the final assembly of a product right before it ships. If you remember just one thing from this whole explainer, please let it be this quote. It just perfectly sums up the entire economic reality of a modern warehouse. It all comes down to labor. Most of that labor is picking orders, and most of that picking time is just travel. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Our demand for instant gratification, right? For 2-hour or next-day delivery, it puts this immense pressure on these systems. It often means there's less time to build those efficient batches we talked about, which means more walking, more labor, and more cost. So the next time you click Buy Now, maybe think about that hidden journey and the real human cost of the walk.